Hello, welcome to Daily Book Dive. Today I will be interpreting Principles, Life and Work by Ray Dalio. This book was published in September 2017. The book has a total of 592 pages, and I will spend about 20 minutes discussing the essence of the book. Achieving goals is fundamentally about living and working based on principles and facing this complex world with absolute rationality. Let me introduce the author, Ray Dalio, known as the Steve Jobs of investment. He is a legendary figure on Wall Street. His name resounds in the investment world. His greatest achievement is founding the hedge fund Bridgewater. Bridgewater has not only surpassed Soros Quantum Fund to become the most profitable hedge fund in history, but has also managed to stay afloat and profitable even during financial crises when other funds suffered huge losses or even closed down. Bridgewater now manages about $160 billion, making it the largest hedge fund in the world. Dalio himself is also known as the godfather of hedge funds. Due to his outstanding performance in the investment world, Dalio was also named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine. This book is not really new, as Dalio had already released a free version in 2010. Principles, this book, is a comprehensive revision and compilation based on his free version. Bill Gates even wrote the foreword for this book. The creation of this book dates back to the 1980s when Dalio began documenting various investment insights due to the high uncertainty in investing, often encountering new situations. He later realized that rather than scrambling each time a new situation arose, it would be better to calmly reflect and summarize, and perhaps develop a set of behavioral guidelines to handle new problems as they arise. After starting to invest, Dalio documented each investment's logic, summarizing patterns and refining investment rules and standards to prepare for future transactions. Principles is highly instructional and practical, popular in both ebook and print formats. The print version sold out the day after its release, and even local readers in the U.S. had to wait a month or two to get their copies, indicating its popularity. If you want to get a copy, you can find the link to the book in the description below. The book is divided into three main parts. The first part is Dalio's personal history of struggle. The second part summarizes his life principles, and the third, his work principles. The latter two parts contain hundreds of principles, presented mainly in list form with brief descriptions for each principle. Having discussed the book's main aspects and the author's background, let's now share some of the core insights from this book. This audio session will explore the book's core content from three aspects. First, we'll discuss Dalio's life principles on how to approach the world with absolute rationality and accurately understand reality. Next, we'll talk about Dalio's work principles on using principles as the foundation of work and making decisions based on the best ideas. Lastly, we'll discuss principles about principles on how to become a professional mistake maker, reflecting on mistakes to develop your own principles. Part 1. Let's first discuss the life principles. This section includes many minor principles, the core of which is to approach the world with absolute rationality, or in other words, to truly face reality. Many people believe they are rational and principled, but recognizing the truth is not that simple. Humans have animal instincts. So often, people let their inner animal spirits drive their actions, thereby neglecting the pursuit of facts and truth. For example, Warren Buffett once mentioned his investment principle: be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. This investment principle sounds simple, but anyone with stock investment experience knows how hard it is to practice this principle during market downturns. It's very difficult to remain rational, and you might end up selling your stocks along with everyone else. To think and act more rationally, Dalio summarized 5 steps to achieving goals. He believes that no matter the goal, one must go through these 5 steps: setting goals, identifying problems, diagnosing problems, designing solutions, and executing solutions. These steps sound easy but are difficult to implement. Many people struggle with the second step of identifying problems, unable to correctly understand them. Why does this happen? Dalio explains that there are 2 reasons. First, everyone has blind spots. Different people have different perspectives on issues. Our habitual ways of thinking might prevent us from accurately recognizing and judging situations. Second, human nature is arrogant and conceited. When someone's views are challenged, their first reaction is often not to admit their mistake but to justify themselves. And if they can't even justify themselves, they simply get angry. Dalio believes that the greatest human tragedy is arrogance and conceit, leading us to proceed with incorrect views and unwillingness to accept criticism. How is such a tragedy born? Neuroscientists say it relates to how the brain functions. Part of our brain wants to know where we are wrong, likes to see our weaknesses so we can evolve and improve. However, another part of the brain perceives real evaluations and criticisms as attacks and desperately activates various defense mechanisms to protect itself from attack. In other words, there are 2 yous in your brain: a rational you and an emotional you, constantly at odds, each vying for control over you. So, how can we ensure the rational you prevails, overcome arrogance and conceit, and avoid blind spots? That involves maintaining an extremely open attitude, acknowledging our blind spots and flaws. Dalio has interacted with countless elite individuals, and none of them are perfect. However, their intelligence lies in their ability to remain extremely open when faced with external skepticism and criticism, and they are very aware of their blind spots and flaws, continuously evolving themselves. Of course, achieving extreme openness is not easy. Dalio also mentioned that it usually takes most people 18 months to get used to this mode of operation. You can start with small things around you, such as being open and honest with family, friends, or anyone else, and after careful consideration, making judgments and choices. You will find that under conditions of extreme openness and honesty, everyone can speak freely, and the outcomes achieved are better than those you could come up with alone. In addition to being extremely open, Dalio believes we should also proactively adopt a scientific and rational approach to all aspects of life, actively turning emotional experiences into rational summaries. For example, if you ask someone how long it takes to commute to and from work each day, most people would say about 40 minutes or about an hour. But few people record their daily commuting times, then analyze the data to find an accurate average commuting time, including the longest and shortest time spent. If you can accurately record and adopt a scientific and rational attitude toward life, your sense of control over life will improve significantly. All right, that covers the first part of the book, the life principles. Let's briefly summarize this section. In this part, Dalio advises people to consciously reject using their animalistic side to think and act, to maintain an extremely open attitude in life, to discard unwarranted pride and unnecessary ego, thereby recognizing facts and truth. Treating life with the attitude of a scientist toward scientific research is essential to truly master life. Part 2. After discussing the life principles, let's continue with Dalio's work principles. Essentially, Dalio's work principles are a continuation of his life principles. He mentions in the book that the work principles are simply the application of life principles to career matters. But work principles are more crucial than life principles. He outlines hundreds of principles in the book, which can be divided into three dimensions: people, culture, and organizational construction and management. Among these numerous principles, the most important one adhered to by Bridgewater is idea meritocracy, also known as the principle of supremacy of the best ideas. Idea meritocracy means that when making decisions, the company chooses the most reasonable and scientific options, rather than simply following those in higher positions. Dalio believes that a company's success depends not on how powerful the founder is or how many resources it has, but on whether the company can adhere to the principle of supremacy of the best ideas. To let the best ideas stand out, the first step is definitely for everyone to present their ideas for everyone to see, and the second step is for everyone to evaluate and offer different opinions. You might ask, how do you judge whether an idea is reasonable? In the book, Dalio introduces a decision-making method used within Bridgewater called the believability-weighted decision-making method. This method fully considers each person's professional background, then assigns different weights to the opinions offered by people with different expertise, and finally calculates the decision based on these weights. For example, if a medical-related topic is discussed at a Bridgewater meeting, the opinions of those with a medical background will carry more weight in the final decision. Those with an accounting background will not have as much influence. Conversely, if the discussion involves an accounting issue, the situation would be reversed. This approach ensures that the decision-making process is fair and democratic, while also ensuring that the final decision is scientific and feasible. Of course, this decision-making method presupposes that everyone is different. Dalio believes that each person's brain and physical characteristics are unique, and everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. When looking at issues, each person has a unique perspective and inevitably has their own limitations. To ensure the quality of the final decision, it is necessary to present various viewpoints and ideas, thoroughly debate them, and then ensure that the final decision is optimized. However, not every company can create an atmosphere that continuously generates excellent ideas. How can excellent ideas be continuously produced within a company? This involves another important work principle of Dalio, called extreme transparency and extreme realism. As we mentioned earlier, one of Dalio's life principles is extreme openness. In his work principles, this extreme transparency and extreme realism follows from extreme openness and is heavily emphasized. The book provides an example where Dalio received an email from a subordinate. The email read, "Dalio, your speech at today's company meeting was simply unacceptable. You were completely unprepared. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spoken so poorly. In the future, you should spend more time preparing for meetings. If needed, I can even join you to help you warm up." At the end of the letter, the subordinate added insult to injury by saying, "If you think my opinion is wrong, you can ask other colleagues or come and ask me directly." It is rare for subordinates to directly challenge their boss in other companies. But for Dalio, such conversations happen daily, and he never gets angry about them, because only in this way can colleagues be honest with each other. Inside the company, regardless of rank, any problems or ideas must be pointed out promptly between colleagues, which is the principle of extreme transparency they adhere to. Moreover, Bridgewater has a somewhat frightening internal rule. Almost all meetings within the company are recorded. If a colleague is discussed during a meeting but is not present, those present must send the recording of the discussion to that colleague. In other words, the company does not allow anyone to talk behind others' backs. For example, there was a time when Dalio and another executive were discussing a staff promotion issue. The executive felt that the employee was very capable and deserved a promotion and raise, but Dalio thought the employee was not sufficiently skilled. Dalio then thought, "No, we can't discuss them behind their backs." So Dalio called the employee to his office and began to discuss his performance directly, giving the employee a chance to explain. This culture of extreme transparency and honesty is theoretically grounded. A scholar at Harvard University, Robert Keegan, found that although most company employees are officially doing one job, they are actually doing two jobs. The first job is their actual job. The second job is managing how others perceive and think of them, especially hiding their flaws and showing their best side. But this second job is a huge waste of time and energy. In Bridgewater's company culture, everyone only needs to do the first job, just being their most natural, comfortable selves, without wasting time and energy on the second job. All of this is still permeated by Dalio's philosophy of absolute rationality. He hopes to create a company where everyone operates as precisely as a machine, fulfilling their responsibilities because this is the most efficient way. However, this extreme transparency principle comes at a cost. In Bridgewater, the turnover rate of new employees is very high. Reports indicate that 1/3 of employees leave the company within the first 2 years of their employment. According to feedback from these former employees, they felt that the communication between colleagues was too harsh, and they were often in a state of being questioned. Hearing this, you might think that the company is too harsh on employees, but this is the principle that Dalio insists on. His philosophy is not people first, but principles above all. All right, that covers the second part of the book, the work principles. Let's briefly summarize this section. In this part, Dalio introduces a decision-making mechanism practiced within Bridgewater called the supremacy of the best ideas principle. In this mechanism, the company's decisions are made using the most reasonable and scientific methods, namely the believability-weighted decision-making method. To enable the company to achieve the supremacy of the best ideas principle, Dalio implemented the extreme transparency and extreme realism principle in the company. Although this principle allows colleagues to be honest with each other, this blunt communication has led to a relatively high turnover rate among new employees. Part 3. Having discussed the work principles, let's now talk about how to form your own principles. In the book's introduction, Dalio mentioned that the value of his principles should be determined by the readers. Actually, what's more important is not the principles themselves, but the thought process behind them. Only by forming your own principles can you make better decisions. We cannot establish principles by listening to others' experiences. Essentially, principles can only come from our own pain plus reflection. Dalio has a peculiar habit. He likes to immerse himself in pain, continuously reviewing these mistakes. He even created an app called Pain Button, literally translated as the pain button, specifically for recording every mistake made and every event that causes pain and reflection. For instance, he often mentions the biggest mistake that influenced him. This mistake occurred in the early 1980s when the unemployment rate in the U.S. was high, and major U.S. banks held a lot of debt from Latin American countries. In August 1982, a debt default occurred in Mexico, which was considered a crisis at the time. Dalio successfully predicted this debt crisis. Consequently, the U.S. Congress and Wall Street TV programs invited him to discuss the crisis. He continued to predict on TV interviews that an economic crisis and a major bear market will occur in the future. Later, Dalio was severely proven wrong. At the time, the Federal Reserve adopted a loose policy to deal with the crisis, which led to more than a decade of a bull market in the U.S. Dalio himself paid a huge price for this incorrect prediction, nearly bankrupting him. However, Dalio later reflected that it was this mistake that led him to thoroughly reflect, shifting his thinking from "I am right" to "How do I know I am right?", making him more rational. In subsequent financial crises, this way of thinking benefited him greatly, as he consistently achieved good returns while others suffered heavy losses in the crises. Therefore, Dalio encourages everyone to rationally record their mistakes and reflections, becoming a professional mistake maker. In our everyday work and life, we experience many things, and after some experiences, we derive some lessons, and sometimes we even have brilliant ideas. But the default setting of the human brain is short-term memory. Unless we deliberately repeat something to remember it, the experiences we gain and the good ideas we think of are easily forgotten. This book, Principles, tells us not to let the experiences gained in life and career remain at the emotional level. We must rationally record and summarize them. Dalio says in the book that he is a professional mistake maker. This professional mistake maker does not mean making many mistakes, but that after each mistake, there is a complete, rational, and comprehensive reflection, allowing the mistake to be transformed into a principle. Whether failure is indeed the mother of success depends on whether you are a professional mistake maker. Otherwise, you only gain vague emotional experiences, and the result is, once the wound heals, the pain is forgotten. The several hundred principles in this book are all meticulously recorded and summarized by Dalio, forming his personal encyclopedia of life. When used, it works like a search engine. Whenever a problem arises in life or career, you can directly search for relevant principles in it as a reference for decision-making. Both Dalio himself and his Bridgewater Associates operate as precisely and meticulously as machines. All encountered problems are recorded and summarized into principles, and when they occur again, the corresponding solutions can be found and then implemented accordingly. Thus, whether it's Dalio himself or his fund, they rarely make mistakes and operate very efficiently in the market. This is the third content of the book, How to Form Your Own Principles. Let's summarize this part. In this section, Dalio believes that only by continuously reflecting on your own mistakes and summarizing emotional experiences into rational summaries can you form your own principles and become a so-called professional mistake maker, allowing each mistake to serve you, ultimately driving your life with your own system of principles and combating the complexity of the world with rationality. This concludes the essence of this book discussed in this audio session. Let's recap. First, we learned about Dalio's life principles. In this section, Dalio advises people to consciously reject using their animalistic side to think and act, to maintain an extremely open cognitive attitude in life, to discard unwarranted pride and unnecessary ego, thereby recognizing facts and truth. Treating life with the attitude of a scientist towards scientific research is essential to truly master life. Next, in the work principles, Dalio introduces a decision-making mechanism practiced within Bridgewater called the supremacy of the best ideas principle. In this mechanism, the company's decisions are determined by the most reasonable and scientific methods rather than hierarchical position levels. Moreover, the company uses the believability-weighted decision-making method to ensure this principle is realized. To enable the company to achieve the supremacy of the best ideas principle, Dalio implemented the extreme transparency and extreme realism principle in the company. Lastly, Dalio discusses how to form your own principles. We don't have to accept all of Dalio's principles as they are. Dalio says what's truly important is forming your own principles. You can only form your own principles by continuously reflecting on your own mistakes, summarizing emotional experiences into rational summaries, and becoming a so-called professional mistake maker, allowing each mistake to work for you, ultimately driving your life with your own system of principles and combating the world's complexity with rationality. Thank you for listening to this book. You can find the link to the book in the description below. If you want to listen to more books like this, leave your comments, give us a like, and subscribe. This encouraged me to bring more profound book insights and share with you. Thank you.